just keep it on a full view. Hello everybody. I guess we're now live. Let me just double check Facebook to make sure that it's working okay. You have a link. All right. Yeah, there we go. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. This is a Projek Wawasan Rakyat's webinar titled Resisting the Clampdown, Malaysians Under Investigation for Speaking Out. We've got a great selection of people to share their experiences and their insights. We are very excited to have them. Thank you all very much for joining us. They've got interesting stories to tell and I don't. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you to our moderator today, the one and only Adli Zakuan. Thank you very much, guys. Take it away.
Oh, wow, one and only. I don't know. I'm not sure about that, but yes. Thank you, Nat. You've actually briefly explained about it. My name is Adli. I'll be the moderator and so-called your host today. And as you know, with the change of government, quite a number of things that happen. And one of the things is somehow there's, there's quite a number of issues that looking at how the government is handling, with criticism and questions and everything. So I guess this forum is quite interesting. We have a lot. This group alone is a real powerhouse. I mean, all those who are basically wanted and and being called for investigation and others. And of course, maybe immediately we will start with Thomas, which is chairperson from Bersi. And maybe Thomas, can you briefly share what had happened? I mean, because most of all of those who are in the public, they just know that you call in. But what did actually happen? What did actually spark the police to call you, and basically the whole story, what happened when during the investigation and all this? So Thomas.
Sure. Thank you, Adli and Ned, for giving me this opportunity. Well, this was in relation to two Facebook posting that we made on the Bersi official Facebook page on the 25th and on the 29th of February. And if you still remember, that was in the midst of the what we call the Sheraton Move, with the government moving back and forth and things like that. And I think it was a very distressing time for a lot of Malaysians watching what was happening, in the midst of that. And of course, naturally, people are upset by that, and they want to express that dissatisfaction by holding peaceful assemblies. And we as well, encourage people to feel free to just go ahead. This is our constitutional right. So some groups organized, and we posted some of the posters on our Facebook page to let people know and what was taking place. So on the 25th, at the start of the Sheraton Move, and 29 when it was coming to an end. So we were called in, rather, the police tried to contact us several weeks ago, but because I think we were still under this RMCO, and so our office was still not fully open, and they couldn't get hold of me or our executive director. So eventually I got a call directly on my handphone about 10 days ago that they want to question me under Section 9, subsection 5 of the Peaceful Assembly Act, and that has got to do with giving notice, not giving notice. In other words, they are investigating Bersi as the organizers of this protest. Now, of course, we made an appointment on the 7th of July last week to go to the IPD Dang Wangi. Now, I went with a lawyer. In fact, I went with two lawyers, Chow Ying and Ding. And but it is a process that I have been quite familiar with over the years. In the last 7 years, I think this was the 16th time that I've been called in by the police. So I already knew the routine very well, and the law and everything. And the whole thing took me 20 minutes in and out of the room of the IO. I gave 2 statements in 20 minutes. That must be a new record, even for me. Because, apart from answering my personal detail, my name and what I do, the rest of the question pertaining to the matters that they were investigating, I exercised my right under Section 112, subsection 2 of the Criminal Procedure Code to only answer in court. So I exercised that right through all the questions. They asked me who were the organizer, did you speak, did you give notice, and blah blah blah, so on and so forth. So and they just copy and paste this. And when that was done, they have to then go through the same thing for the 29th December paper. So I just suggested to her, why don't you just save that file as, the report number, save as, then I will sign the paper. So she did that, and that's why I broke the record in 20 minutes. But seriously, this is we are not intimidated, but I think they want to intimidate the rest of Malaysians.
When you mentioned they, are you referring to the police or?
Well, I think the police acted under orders, the present government, they at least cleared with the present government. So I hold the government responsible for this. I think the intent of all this is really to intimidate, not so much us. I think many of us knew what we signed up to. We are committed to what we are doing, and we cannot be easily intimidated. But they want to send a strong signal to the rest of Malaysians. And I think it's incumbent on us to show that we are not intimidated,
But just have to check, Thomas, when you call in for investigation or record of your statement, I mean, we were trying to visualize on how do they act. As in, are you put in the room where 3 or 4 police officers are asking you questions, or it's just where you go to the counter
slap me around and no, nothing like that. No, nothing like that. I have to say, and in my short statement, I say that the police were very professional, and it was only one person, a female inspector, with me and my 2 lawyers, in a very small room. I really feel sorry for all the police that I visited. Very cramped, and on that day, aircon wasn't even working. So, but they were very professional and very polite in how they conducted the interview with me. And so I was grateful for that. But I know that they look at, sometimes I have heard, I have heard with my own ears, others, younger activists been kind of like shouted at and, verbally abused. But with me, never. All 16 times, they were very polite and professional.
All right. Thank you, Thomas, for that sharing. And of course, it's quite clear that, as you said, that they are acting orders, and of course, there's a question mark there, and what is happening, and then who's trying to intimidate who, and then who is afraid of who. So this is something that we try to look further and understand. So I guess next, let's hear from Cynthia from C4. Center, of course, talking about cronyism and talking about corruption and how the government is actually dealing with it. And of course, you will be calling for a statement that you made with regards to the change of government. And maybe it's better for you yourself to share what had happened, what sparked it, and how do you face it?
Well, thank you very much, Projek Wawasan, and thank you, Adli, for moderating us. Well, just very quickly, I just want to bring us back to that time where there was so much going on behind the scenes. We didn't really know as Rakyat Malaysia what was really going on at that time, but we knew that the politicians were meeting in Sheraton Hotel PJ, the Sheraton Move. They had meetings in the morning, and then we heard that Mahathir was going back because he wasn't happy with some meeting, and then at night they met again, and so on and so forth. And just very quickly, over a couple of days, we suddenly had a change of government. And it had nothing to do with the people. In fact, it was something that was quite very directly undermining the vote of Malaysians who quite overwhelmingly voted for change and voted for reforms in 2018. So naturally, there was stress, there was anger, there was disappointment, there were many things. We released a statement basically 2 weeks after, because we had a lot of organizational discussion about what to do. There were protests going on outside. I mean, they weren't big, but there was obviously discontent. And the discontent was very legitimate because the people were left out of the entire change process that was taking place. And there was an internal coup, which means that the very people who helped to form the government in 2018 decided to run away with some of the MPs with them. So there were many names given to them, etc. So we released a statement on the day after Prime Minister Muhyiddin said something about keeping to anti-corruption pledges. So we released a statement that said that it's really difficult to imagine a backdoor government wanting to keep the promises of anti-corruption, which means that they would still declare their assets, they would make sure the institutions were independent, and so on and so forth. So we released a statement and we called for a number of things. One is the immediate and most concerning worry was that there could be real horse trading going on between MPs, which means MPs could be bought to move coalitions and to form governments based on numbers. So we wanted the MECC to come in to investigate. And I think that call is a very legitimate call. It isn't something out of this world. It was to actually see if money politics was actually roaming freely among members of parliament in order to grab power. The second call that we made was also to get the public involved, especially those whose members of parliament decided to leave and form the new government. I think they had a particular demand, a bigger emphasis actually to get their members of parliament to answer to them. Why did they do whatever they did? And so we encouraged them to go flood the service center, go meet their MP, find out what's really going on, why did they leave Pakatan and so on. And I hold until today that whatever we asked for are actually very legitimate concerns. So we were naturally very shocked, surprised that the police calls us right after CMCO was over, which was on the 10th of June, to go to the police station. And the investigations were under Section 4.1 of the Sedition Act and also under the Communications and Multimedia Act. So we cooperated. And like Thomas said, the investigations were incredibly professional. There was absolutely no complaint. There was one inspector. And I even requested if we could have the questioning done in PJ instead of Bukit Aman, because I thought I'd go all the way to Bukit Aman, so dramatic and all that. And he said, oh, boleh, sure. So, I mean, they were obliging. He found a room that we could have the interview and all that. And I found out that they were actually investigating a blog that had published our statement. So they weren't investigating us. And that blog had taken some excerpts from the statement and had basically created their own analysis over what our statement meant. So it became more dramatic and all that. So it's a third party thing and we absolutely didn't own any of it. So Section 112 again gives us that right not to incriminate ourselves. So that session went on. But I think just very quickly, this was the second time we were targeted in a very quick time. Just 2 weeks before June 10th, we do a lot of investigative work. And I think that's what makes the work of anti-corruption really interesting, because corruption never manifests itself at the surface. It's always the crime which is hidden. So even if it's migrants in detention, you know that the corrupt practices are what manifests this problem, or whatever it is. You've got to dig deep to find where the corrupt relationship lines lie and so on. So we do a lot of investigative work. It's difficult work because the information isn't readily out there. So this one was particularly related to COVID-19 test kits, which were procured by the Ministry of Health. It is a case which is now currently being investigated by the MACC, but we found some interesting shareholding information which we released. And when right after releasing it, the shareholding information somehow connects back to the current health minister. So he slapped us with a letter of demand. But our statement was, can you please explain what the shareholding information means? Can you please explain what these companies and how these companies who are actually property developers somehow got involved in providing medical test kits? I mean, how come they suddenly became medical experts when they're actually property developers? So there's some suspicion, some dubiousness and all that. So we asked the health minister to explain, but instead we got a letter of demand thrown at us. That was the first indication that the tolerance level of asking questions, demanding accountability, getting the current people in power to actually talk to us was something that was going to be incredibly difficult. And it showed itself with our invitation to the police to go questioning. And then one by one, it started. I think Tashny started the ball rolling with her call for a police investigation. And then many other people started to get called in as well. So we're really concerned about the shrinking space. The ability to express is now currently under threat. And perhaps the objective is to intimidate and to create fear. But that is something that I think we have to take it head on and tell the government that this isn't really the way to go. I mean, they should actually start listening to the murmurs and the people on the ground and what is really concerning them. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. I mean, you mentioned fear, and coincidentally, I actually just ordered a book, and it's apa orang kata iklan tanpa berbayar lah. This book called How Fear Works. So it's quite interesting. Maybe one day I will share you the review of the book. But it's basically talking about how culture is fear is used, and then and we maybe in this meeting we will see how does that create what I call that, some sort of atmosphere where people are feeling a bit more scared to share the news. But this is not for Tashny, obviously. I mean, look at her tweets and the kind of things that she reported and the kind of responded that people gave. I mean, it's quite inspiring. So Tashny, maybe it's better for you yourself to share about what happened to you. I mean, you're doing okay, and what kind of a section they used to call you in, and what kind of reports, and how was the police and all that kind of yeah.
Oh,
please.
crap. Sin Yew, what section did they call it?
Nah, it's okay if you can remember it.
Yeah, sorry. I know one of the sections was the CMA. And I think the other one was 504 of the Penal Code. Sin Yew, correct me if I'm wrong, to do with public peace. So, thank you. So, thank you. So what happened was, it was May Day, and we were informed that there was a raid going on in one of the red zones. Myself and a lot of other reporters actually went. So I was tweeting from the ground, and also I wrote an article afterwards. And there was a lot of negative response on Twitter. Like, a lot of cyber troopers were out and angry with the fact that, we were basically saying you shouldn't be able to treat migrant workers or refugees this way. And I think that was a Friday, and Saturday I got a call from an inspector from Bukit Aman saying that, there's been a police report filed and we want you to come in to take your statement. And then I think I spent most of Sunday bothering Sin Yew on the phone. We went in a few days later. They took our statement. It was about 2 hours, I think. Really, in my opinion, ridiculous questions. And we just said that we would answer in court for everything. That was pretty much like, they took my phone. Sorry, when you do the screen switch thing.
Yeah, sorry.
They took my phone, which I still haven't gotten back.
You still haven't got it back? Sorry.
I still haven't gotten it back.
Let's do it.
Yeah, but when the same inspector called me in for the second round of questioning to do with the book. And when he messaged me, I took the opportunity to ask him about the first case. And that was when he told me that that was NFA, no further action. Yeah, so I like how he sort of timed that, he was efficient in his communication.
So, but it took 2 hours for them to to know that there's no further action that required to.
I don't know. The questioning was 2 hours. They only got back to me about no further action several weeks later. Yeah.
But it's quite interesting. I mean, what kind of question that they asked during those 2 hours? Because if you look at Thomas, who is a veteran and basically provided a statement, and then why does it take 2 hours? What kind of ridiculous question when you?
So the questions that I remember being asked were things like, so I referred to the raid as a human rights. I said that I'd seen many human rights violations or heard of many human rights violations going on, and they said, "What is your definition of a human rights violation?" And then another question they asked was, why have you singled out PDRM/immigration and not KKM? Which I was like, why are you so sensitive? And then this is on me. So my first tweet was actually like, what the fuck is going on? Because I didn't expect people to, that was just for me. And they actually asked like, what did you mean by the word fuck? I was like, I don't know how to answer that really. So yeah.
So it's like defending a thesis, I guess. Looking at the semantic of the words used and everything. So
I mean,
it's good to know. I mean,
I wouldn't use fuck in my thesis, so maybe I should use it in my tweets. But yeah.
Well, thank you, Tashny. I mean, but again, that shows on how people actually. I mean, the action. Most of the times, I realize is because of the social media space that we have, right? Most of us use social media to do to express our views, and of course now it has become the mainstream of news even, and how people react to it.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think there can be a separation between a reporter using social media and writing an article when it comes to reportage, because the nature of things is that you want your updates so quickly that what I tell you is happening on the ground from my Twitter should be considered just as valid as something you read on my website or in the newspaper, right? Yeah, but unfortunately, because it's so easy to get angry with and respond to the reporter or whoever is posting these things on Facebook or Twitter and things like that, people feel that they're more empowered to say things like to basically engage in hate speech. And the really odd thing is why is action been taken against? I've not heard of a case of action been taken against the person issuing the threats, but only the person broadcasting the news. Like, I think Heidi can tell you later, she got a lot of very, very unsavory messages sent to her privately. And I don't know if you made a police report, but in the situations where I've encountered things like that, I've never seen action taken against those people. So what's going on there?
Yeah, let's go straight to Heidy then. Of course, quite a number of us actually quite vocal on the issue of migrants and refugees, and I personally do have my quite actively campaigning for the migrants and refugees. I don't know, maybe our followers are quite different, but I never face any kind of threats. It's just somehow, I don't know, is it I'm using my Malay male privilege or what, but somehow it's quite...
Probably a little bit, to be honest. Probably a little bit.
It's quite interesting to see how this differs. I mean, according to age, according to gender, and how does the police and how the people respond. But maybe, Heidy, maybe you can share your stories then. I mean, after you shared what has happened in the immigration detention center and how people reacted to it, how the police reacted to it, and now where you are now, I do see that you still face quite a number of so-called attacks from people, privately even. So maybe, yeah, can you share your stories? Or your mic, Heidy, sorry.
Yeah. So I think for me, it happened when I posted, I think like quite a number of weeks ago, I got up, I was awakened by a call at 4:30 a.m. by one of a migrant lady that I've worked with. So basically, because I was awakened by a call, took the call, and she was just basically just recounting her experience in detention. She called me at 4:30 a.m. because she had massive panic and anxiety attacks and she needed someone to speak to. I was just really bothered, I guess, after the call, that I wrote a post, and it was really just, a reflection, a post that was just narrating her story and her experience in detention centers. And there was nothing quite, really targeting. I think the basis of my post was just narrating her experience in detention. Yeah. And long story short, the post went really viral. And so, in the post, I also linked, I had links to the mass arrest that took place. I had links to, if I'm not mistaken, Suakam reports. I had also links to articles on, news articles, on increased number of cases in detention centers following the mass arrest. Increase of numbers of COVID-19 cases in detention centers following the mass arrest. So I was linking all that up, and basically in the articles that I linked, especially the article where our health DG also mentioned that, like, hey, the mass, we should be treating refugees and migrants properly. But long story short, I think 2 days after my post went viral, the Immigration Director General released a statement refuting my claims and basically saying that they will file a police report against me. If I'm not mistaken, that was on the 10th of June. Last week on, I've lost track of the dates, with so much happening, but basically last week on Tuesday, I suddenly got a call from IPD Putrajaya telling me that they were outside my house, wanting to bring me in for questioning. So they were outside my house wanting to bring me in for questioning. I happened to not be home, but my aunt and my family was home, so they actually brought in my aunt because apparently our phone numbers are linked. Even though, so I'm using a prepaid number, I've been using a prepaid number for years. It's just that, when I registered for a number before I was 18 years old, it just made sense to go under my aunt's line. So they brought my aunt in, and because I wasn't around, they basically told me that I had to show up in the police station within the same day in IPD Putrajaya. So that's when I called my lawyer Sin Yew, and then I showed up in Putrajaya at about 2:20. What was just really concerning was that there was no, like so many of you guys got calls inviting you guys to the balai. For me, they showed up at my doorstep. No prior calls. They showed up at my doorstep, basically wanting to escort me in. So together with Sin Yew, who's my lawyer, we went in about 2:20, questioned for about 2 hours, and 2 hours. So I guess similar to the experience of many others, the police were really professional. I mean, it was just one officer asking questions. I mean, the questions were, in my opinion, questionable. But it took 2 hours and we were out.
What happened to your aunt? I mean, you said because they took your aunt. I mean, does she stay? She stayed there the whole day, the whole time until you come in, or what happened to her?
So she was in from about 10:30, 11 a.m. all the way till 2:20 when I arrived. And they brought her to a separate room, took a statement. They told her that she had to wait until I arrived, took a statement, and then released her while I was being questioned in another room. Like Tashny, my phone was taken as well. So I'm being investigated. I can't remember, the exact quotes, the laws, but for defamation and misuse of the internet.
So what kind of questions that they ask when you say it's questionable? I mean, sometimes because of course when we know, for example, if it's theft, then we know the kind of question is quite direct, and I don't know. I mean, I'm not police, but I can imagine that the kind of question might be quite direct. But for you,
so the questions I was asked was stuff like, what is my source of internet? How many times do I access Facebook a day? Who has access to my Facebook accounts? How many status updates do I post in a day? I think a lot of the questions, or what devices do I use to access Facebook? Yeah, these are most of the main questions being asked, really surrounding my Facebook activity usage.
So I guess it's because of the section used probably that the police looking more how to establish the case or something that relates to phones and stuff. So straight to Mr. Lawyer, Sin Yew. First of all, thank you for helping our two friends there. And of course, you can see there's a pattern use, MCMC Act. For Thomas, it's Peaceful Assembly Act. But then the MCMC Act, which often known as Akta Sakit Hati, but in this case, it's probably using a different section. So maybe can you share, man, what is the easiest, I don't know, I mean, why do the police often use this act? Because I can see quite consistently they're using MCMC Act, for example. I mean, why does that act, and well, I mean, what is the implication to it?
Hello.
Hi, yeah.
Hi.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, okay, I'm on. Yeah. So I've been asked to attend proceedings today to make sure nobody say anything.
So far, is it okay so far? Just to let it.
So far it's all right, you know. I don't think it's gonna land anybody in any hot soup.
Good to know. Alhamdulillah.
But in case anything happens, try not to call me. Because I've been making an appearance in the police station far too often. But yeah, I think there'll be a lot of people watching. I won't be surprised if you know, some members of the force are paying a very keen attention to what is being said today. So I better watch what I say as well. Could either be a witness or be a suspect. But to answer your question, Adli, it's really an issue of us dealing with what type of laws we have. So, you know, the laws that we have are very vague, and it's very problematic. It's very broad, and in my opinion, a lot of it is being misused. And for example, the section 233 is a favorite go-to section of theirs, simply because everything now is being posted on the internet. So, you know, when you post something on the internet, automatically you would engage the jurisdiction of the Communications and Multimedia Act. And because of how Section 233 is being worded, I'm not sure if you have it on your screen, but the words and the wordings in that particular section, it really covers everything. So anybody who is unhappy with some comments that being posted in a distant, far away corner of the internet could potentially commit an offense under Section 233. That being said, I think that particular section, which deals with improper use of network facilities, it has been grossly misused, because this particular section, yeah, you have it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, improper use of network facilities or network services. So this particular provision, the intention behind it, it's really to deal with situations where, for example, someone sends a threatening email, or somebody sends, for example, 100 SMSs or 100 WhatsApp messages a day to a person, and that, you know, ends up annoying or scaring or harassing that person. And this act, like most things that are bad in this world, came from the British. So British, the grandfather or the ancestor of this act is the Postal Services Act. I hope I got that right, but you know, it was a 1940 act back in the United Kingdom, where instead of it being an improper use of network facilities, it's an improper use of posting services. So somebody, for example, sent 101 threatening letters, and of course, you know, at that time it takes probably 2 months for the letter to reach that person, so you wouldn't feel immediately threatened. But the point is, it's meant to prevent somebody from sending that type of messages to another person, death threats, through the mail. Even though that's something that doesn't happen anymore because everybody's using SMS. But that was the intention. And that got adopted into our Communications and Multimedia Act. And now we have this. So it was never meant to deal with a situation where I post something on Facebook, somebody else gets angry because they have a different opinion or they might not like what I post. It's not meant to deal with a situation like that. But unfortunately, the authorities and the courts have consistently misinterpreted this particular provision. So now this provision is being used on, well, everybody here really. Thomas, Tashny, Heidy, Cynthia. Yeah, could form a band actually. Section 233.
It's a quite good idea.
Yeah. So that is basically a background of how laws are being misused. And you can see it is being misused because we forget about history, we forget about parliamentary intention, the drafter's intention. Well, that's probably not a good test because, the drafter is technically those who sit in parliament and, the past 2 days, 3 days, look at who has been sitting in parliament. Not exactly a good test to gauge what they intended, if they intended at all. So yeah, I think what's important is that we need to call out on the consistent misuse of laws that has been used to harass activists and even citizens and even netizens. A lot of people think that this 233 is merely being used on these people here, but it's not. It's being used consistently on some pachi or machi who don't know what they have posted. Somebody gets sakit hati lah, like how you put it, and as a result of that, they get a hefty fine, and some of them get put behind bars. So, it's fundamental liberties are being trampled consistently on a daily basis. Some are reported, most are not reported. A lot of people are being called up to the police. And I think we need to embark on a mission to re-educate the public, a mission to re-educate the authorities that these laws aren't meant to be used in this way. And a lot of reports that are made by people who are not happy against activists, against people who they disagree with, the police actually have the power when they receive such report to say that, look, there's no offense being committed here. Why do I have to call whoever that they are reporting against to come to a police station to have the report taken? Because that is the excuse that the police are using. The excuse that they are using is that, saya hanya buat kerja, we receive report, we must now investigate. No, you don't have to investigate. You need to look at the report and you need to be satisfied that there is indeed a possibility that the offense is being committed. And if there isn't, you don't have to call people up. You don't have to investigate. You can dismiss it from the beginning. You can NFA it from the beginning. That's your job, not to call. You're not a machine. You need to exercise some degree of discretion and exercise some degree of thought. Not everything you receive you have to investigate, especially when your investigation could be interpreted as a form of harassment against individuals and activists, human rights defenders. And, of course, all of them have their phone taken or laptop. And that's pretty much it. Now we know the price of expression and free speech is the loss of your laptop and handphone.
Yeah, Tashny, you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm done. Tashny can take over. Don't say anything wrong.
No, so like I remember there was this case in July, actually early July, it's actually just a week ago, where that retiree was fined 2K for insulting the health minister on his Facebook. And obviously it's like this old pakcik. So I try to like find him on Facebook, and I think he's just stopped using it or something because his account is still there, but he's not replying. But in this kind of case, where he actually said, can you just find me now because I can't come back and forth from where does he stay? Like I don't know, he lives like somewhere else, not KL. So he actually said, can you just find me now? Because I don't want to come back, keep going back and forth. So in that kind of situation where it's not someone who's an activist, who has the privilege of like calling you up, what can be done in this kind of case?
Yeah, see you. And of course, follow-up question as well. I mean, since it's related to MCMC, I remember for Tashny, the minister himself actually responded in a tweet saying that he instructed the, I don't know, MCMC not to, I mean, can a minister do that? I mean, is a minister in the position to instruct the agency or the commission to not investigating under 233? And if yes, and why doesn't he do it for other cases as well? Because now you can see there's other cases that is under that section.
Tashny, can you repeat your question? I lost you a bit there.
Okay, so basically there was this uncle from, I think, Kelantan, who was investigated and then found guilty of insulting the health minister on his Facebook, right? And he was fined 2K. He said he's not going to contest, just find me on the spot because he doesn't want to travel back and forth, right? So in this kind of situation where you have like this pakcik who doesn't have, you know, the privilege the activists have of having such a large platform, of being able to call you to ask them to like demand them to the balai, what can we do to basically help these people?
Yeah, good question.
Because it's really not fair, right?
Yeah, that's the thing, you see, because you're talking, you have limited resources and you have such widespread use of this act. So one of the things that, you know, I sort of like crossed my mind when we were proposing reform to 233 back with the PH government, because PH government was reluctant to remove 233. Even though it's part of their manifesto, you know, there was 2 years and PH politicians might disagree with me on this. I thought that it could have been done then. They felt that 233 was still required. I think there were some talks about how to amend it. Some form of it should still survive. But the point is that one of the ideas that I sort of mooted at that time was make this as though as a traffic offense, you see. Make it something that you can just fine, there shouldn't be any investigation. MCMC just slap a fine on that person, you know, 500 ringgit.
But there will be strict liability and you can't defend it, so...
Yeah, but the way it's been going, the fines have been much more severe and it involves imprisonment, and there is a criminal record that comes along with it. So, you know, as a form of compromise or halfway house, even though the manifesto was to abolish this, perhaps something like turning it into a traffic offense would be a viable halfway house. So, you know, had that happened, even though for me, I would still disagree with that because I don't believe any fine should be imposed on free speech. But obviously, you know, politicians, when they're in power, they have different ideas. It's very disappointing that you see something being said and something else being delivered. And now, you know, there's a revisionist form of what had happened.
Yeah.
So, had that happened, we could have perhaps dealt with this issue of having limited resources, and some poor pakcik from Kelantan would not have to worry about what he has posted on Facebook. Most of these things, they hundreds of thousands of posts are being made on Facebook every day. You know, so how exactly are you going to police it? You can't. It's only being policed when somebody is annoyed with what you had posted or offended with your posted, and that's very subjective. So where's the justice here?
And I did a bit quick Googling, and then it seems that the one who's lodged a complaint, lodged a report on the statement made by the Pakcik is actually an officer in Kementerian Kesihatan. It's not the it's not the person himself who actually come forward, you know. I mean, so the sakit hati doesn't to be the one who sakit hati, but others who are not the one mentioned also can actually lodge a report.
And a lot of people forget that, oh yeah, you know, you can have your day in court. You just don't have to plead guilty, but you forget that the moment you're being investigated, you're being put through this process where it's as good as a punishment. Because imagine a report being lodged in Sabah, where somebody there is offended, and then you have to travel to Sabah to be investigated. You are put through course, you are put through time, and then you have to go through whatever grilling that you have to you go through. You have to get a lawyer, you have to get legal advice. So that itself is a form of punishment already. So a lot of people forget that aspect.
Yeah,
it's not just about going to court.
Thank you. I mean, because generally people in public, especially most of the time they say, panggil untuk siasatan je bukan apa. I mean, but that's a good point. I mean, you shared that the siasatan itself is some sort of a punishment. I mean, that
nobody should be put through investigation unnecessarily without just cause.
But Thomas, you've gone through this 16 times. I mean, if this is the purpose of intimidating, has it been successful? I mean, obviously, for 16 times, so must not be successful, right? But what is your view on this?
Well, I mean, obviously not on me somehow. I still do the thing I do. But I think the real intent is the wider public, you know, who are not used to this sort of things. And when they see people being called up for Facebook posting or Twitter posting, it does have a chilling effect. You know, I mean, you cannot deny that it doesn't work. It does work, you know, by and large. But I think that's where I said earlier that it's actually really much incumbent on us to show that this is unjust and that we are not afraid. And that's why solidarity gatherings and protests is so important. You know, when somebody is called in, they shouldn't go in alone, but we need to be there to show solidarity, whether we agree or not agree. You know, that is solidarity, not because you agree with everything that was posted, you know, but it is our freedom that is at stake. You know, so I totally agree. Earlier, I mean, Tashny said that some of us, because we are known, you know, for whatever work we do, but there are really a lot more people out there on a daily basis that are being picked up by police car coming from the south all the way to wherever and brought down all the way for hours in handcuff and not just being questioned, but held in detention, you know, for a few days, 4 days, 5 days to be questioned. And then later on, charged or not charged. Now I'm thinking of one case, Patrick Teo. Patrick, you know, I mean, we all know him, and he put a post, and if those of us saw that post, we also asked ourselves what's the big issue there, you know, and but he was police like Heidy came and pick him up, and if you know Patrick, he's actually polio. He can't walk well, but they picked him up and put him in a police car, brought him down to Johor Bahru, and he was, I think, 4 days or 5 days in detention, and after that he was released. But a few weeks later they charged him, and he's charged under this same section of CMA for with intent to insult, you know. So it does have a chilling effect, and that's the kind of thing that they want to send out the message, and we have to fight that.
Yep. So Tashny and Heidy and also Cynthia, I mean, how does this process impacted you, your family, and does it change how you want to do things? Does it stop you, or even does it slow you down? Can you share? I mean, maybe you start with Heidy, maybe because you and your aunt face this, and I just want to know what are the implications that we have not seen out in public.
Yeah. I think definitely it was an extremely scary experience. Um, I wouldn't be lying if I said that I wasn't shaken by all that's happening. Uh, like it is. I mean, also because I guess being in also, the sections I guess that I am being investigated under defamation. And I remember just having a conversation with the inspector that was questioning me, and asked him why, I mean, just really what troubles you guys so much about my posting, right? And I was told that, my intent uh to them comes off as me trying to tarnish the country's good name. And I guess for those that know me, I'm far from the opposite. I'm far from the opposite. I'm that Malaysian that carries the Malaysia flag with me everywhere I go when I travel across the globe. Really super proud, proudly Malaysian. And now just being in so just being investigated for, I guess, defamation and trying to tarnish the country's good name has been really um has in many ways, I guess, sorry, in
Nice,
many
okay.
ways impacted me in a sense as a young person that really wants to that's here to love and serve the country. So um still, I mean, I stand by, I stand by the importance of speaking up. And I guess as I battle through this, thoughts and emotions, I'm constantly reminded, like, hey, while I'm really thankful that I have such a strong bunch of like activist circle, of friends that share the same sentiments to journey with. But I guess what really concerns me is those that don't have the same support, right? When we silence voices who speak up against injustice and we maybe punish them in such a way, are we basically taking away everyone else's voice as well? Um, yeah.
Yep.
So sorry. That's really where I am at the moment.
I can see that. Well, Cynthia, maybe you want to weigh in, and then how, I mean, as you can see, how it impacted Heidy, for example, and then, of course, we all are supportive and with solidarity with her, but there are others who are, of course, the voiceless, who might not be able to be captured here, and impacted them on how they want to do things. I mean, how do you see this impacting in the longer term, Cynthia? As in, of course, in fighting corruption is not a day fight. I mean, clearly it's not even 23 months of struggle. I mean, it requires more than that. But because of this, what kind of condition that we are living in now? How bad we are? Or how good?
Yeah, well, maybe if I can just take on from what Heidi said, from a not so young person like me. I've actually been through this kind of very repressive climate in the Reformasi days when I was young and, very excited about the change process and all that. It was actually a very easy tool to have the police clamp down on the movement, the growing voice of people becoming bolder, people becoming angrier, more excited about owning the politics and owning the change process. And I think that is what is really frightening to the people in power, that when people become empowered, they are actually challenged. And I kind of went through this whole process of reformasi. And so when that change happened in 2018, of course, there was a lot of hope that certain bad laws would be reformed. And we're left a little bit disappointed, or maybe a lot disappointed, that it didn't really happen in the 2 years that Pakatan had a chance to do so. Of course, 2 years is a very short time, but it was really important that some laws like the Sedition Act, for example, there's no reason for it to be in our society. It's an archaic law and it should have just gone. But we're now back to it. We're now back to the kind of political environment of repression, of trying to make sure that citizen participation is something that won't happen. Participatory government is not something that they're excited about, because that would mean that there's greater checks and balance, there's greater need for accountability, they have to be transparent, they have to respect basic human rights and so on. So we understand that power game, but we also wanted to tell the politicians hearing us today, and especially to the public hearing us today, that the chilling effect is something that we don't want to have in Malaysian society. We want, as much as we're modernizing economically, globally and all that, we want to have that space to be able to offer suggestions, offer ideas, to disagree. And it's fine to disagree.
Even to report corruption. Yeah.
Absolutely. So people being involved in public policy is one of the most important things that is actually needed.
Hope it's not the police.
So the most important things actually that's really needed in our society today. So I think we really need to change the narrative. We really need, I mean, when I was younger and trying to be very excited about all the activism in Swaram and all, I remember there were lots of trainings being organized on Know Your Rights.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's some trainings on My Consti, Know Your Rights and stuff. It needs to go out there. People need to know their rights. And it's not just us. People need to know that if the police visit their homes, do they even need a permit to get in? Do they need something to be able to haul us up? Do they need to serve a notice? You know, it's things like that. And I think the more people know about it, the more empowered we are. And that whole point about solidarity, I think, is really very important. So the onus is on us, really, as activists, as advocates. We need to get out there, talk to our residents, our neighbors, our association. Maybe we can do these things now, because it's really an important time to get ourselves aware and educated. So whatever government's in power, back door, front door, and if there's a snap election tomorrow, we know, and we should know, that we are in charge, that we're the ones who will decide what kind of government we want. But we haven't reached there yet, because I think we haven't brought Malaysian people with us in this whole process. Mm-hmm. So we have to deal with the repressive climate again. Mm-hmm. And I think really it's the younger folks like Heidy and Adli and all this parliament digital people and stuff that's going to lead the way. And I believe that we can.
But I mean, listening to this, I mean, of course, the mantra now, at least for me, is 1122 of the CPC. Anything will answer in court. I mean, that is quite important. But yeah, Cynthia, I mean, of course, I got the experience of working with public servants and others, and quite a number of them, of course, they see things and they wanted to share, they wanted to express, they wanted to report, but they don't feel safe. Sin Yew, I mean, we have Whistleblower Act, so how protected are the whistleblowers in Malaysia? I mean, especially civil servant, for example. I mean, because, you know, if they see things, they see corruptions, they wanted to, but they don't feel safe. So what is your advice to them, to this group of people? Should they come out now, or if not now, when? Or are they protected? Can you be their lawyers, for example? So this.
Well, I think Cynthia is doing something on the Whistleblower Act, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but the reason why she's doing something about the Whistleblower Act is because the current Whistleblower Act is not functioning. Otherwise, she wouldn't be doing something about it.
I think just to say one section of the Whistleblower Act actually says you can only report to the law enforcement, which means you go make a report to the police or to MACC. And that has proven to be quite ineffective, because there's a serious trust deficit with law enforcement institutions in our country. And I mean, for example, if you go report to the police or to MACC, and if they could be involved or complicit to something that you're whistleblowing about, you never ever be able to see your complaint actually resolved. So it's this whole thing about speaking up. If you're trying to put the lid on speaking up, how are people even going to call out corruption? If you can't call out corruption, no need all that big talk about fighting corruption, clean government, and all that, because you can't even speak up. Like in the civil service, the constant complaint is ikut arahan. So they have to ikut arahan, which means you cannot complain that your boss has asked you to do something which didn't go according to procedure, or there was a bribery allegation involved, that. So it's the climate now that that needs to change.
So what is your advice now then? I didn't, like you said, because if it's not effective, and I mean, because I personally face these groups, yeah. I mean, there are civil servants who are really unhappy. They wanted to share, they wanted to take pictures and stuff, but then unfortunately, no, maybe you should not. I mean, because of that. And because of this, of course, corruption continues. And what is your advice then? I mean, well, maybe Tashny here, since you're in the media, should they go to the media, and how can you save them? I mean, how can you save this group of people who wanted? Of course, in reporting, there's always this question when someone coming up and anonymous, and it will make it less credible, I guess. But maybe is there any other option as a media person on how you can actually disclose the issue of corruption, but at the same time safeguard your rights and of course the one who's actually disclosing about these stories?
Actually, that's probably a better question for Sin Yew, but I can tell you that when people come to me with tip-offs, we have to do our best to, fact check, do our due diligence. You can't just publish rumors for obvious reasons. But the quality of the things you come forward with obviously say a lot. So if you come forward to a reporter with documents, with emails, with things you're not supposed to have, obviously that holds a lot more weight. Mm-hmm. Does that answer your question at all?
Yep. But what's your comment on Al Jazeera then? I mean, of course, people are attacking them about the reports on the detention centers, and of course, I mean, looking at the video, of course, there's a quite number of questionable practice as a media officers. But then, what is your view on that video? I mean, not about the content, but the effort and others. I mean, also about the content, sorry. So it's about the whole thing. Does that something that should be celebrated, or something that we should be? Is there some sort of a standard practice that media should follow, and does that actually follow the standard practice, for example?
Could you specify what you mean by practices?
I mean, those who are actually commenting about the video, for example, there's another guy coming up, this dentist who showing that, this is not how media should work. I mean, showing off a media card, asking permission to come in, and second is of course taking a video of a person who disclosed about the stories, but without blurring his face and others. So these are the things that put people in question about the credibility of the reporting and others.
Right. Well, I don't think that the holding up your media pass thing should question your credibility, because obviously I am going to hold up my media pass, and I've been in situations where I've held up my media pass and I've been completely ignored. So it's you have to keep pressing the point. Also, I really don't think we should be giving any face to that video with the dentist from Wisconsin or whatever. Like, who exactly is he to come in? I mean,
but Bernama give them quite a
yeah,
it must be somebody.
And if we're critical media consumers, we should be asking why, to be honest. But I will say, with regards to not blurring out the guy's face, I would ask, was he properly informed of the risks? Was he told how dangerous it could be as a foreigner in Malaysia? I can only say from a personal perspective, I don't ever publish the names of my migrant worker sources, because I know how quick and petty and vicious retribution can be. Mm-hmm. So I can say that I wouldn't do, because you have to just do as little harm as you can. Mm-hmm. I don't know the thought processes or the vetting process that went on. I don't even know if maybe he wanted to be named and whether or not that would change anything. So I honestly am not positioned to comment on that. I can say that the way the authorities have reacted to both him and the reporters involved is completely not proportional at all. I mean, it's harassment, especially with regards to him, and taking away his work permit, I think was recently reported. Yeah, that is completely ridiculous. It's targeting, it's bullying, it's intimidation.
Yeah, I mean, it shows on how much the media again is at the forefront of freedom of expression. I mean, it's basically the apex of it. I mean, if the media is not free of reporting, and of course, it's quite worrying and it's quite troublesome. And then we've seen the case of Malaysia Kini, for example, who basically on Malaysian Insight, who got charged for a comment made by readers, yeah, and there's so many other stuff. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I only look at Mr. Lawyer. I mean, how protected are the media? Do they have some sort of a special protection as a media personnel? For example, like parliamentarian, they can just say anything in the parliament. Does the media has that kind of rights and privileges?
Nat knows all about comments on someone's blog. Regards to the Malaysia Kini case, yeah, so they're actually, no, Sin Yew should probably take this because he was tweeting from court that day. So I'm gonna pass that over to him, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sin Yew.
Oh, no, media doesn't have any special protection. In fact, conversely, I would think that they are placed in a worse position because of the reach that they have. So that would mean that whatever they post would be under greater scrutiny. But I think media, unlike normal members of the public, they would have the support and resources to deal with any form of harassment. And we see that in a lot of reporters that are being investigated. So the support would be domestically as well as internationally. So that is something that is great, because you see a lot of solidarity with the media. You see a lot of support being given to them. It's those who tweets or comments or whatever they post that do not get reported, that go under the radar, that get investigated under 233 or whatever laws that they may have offended, criminal defamation. Those are the ones that we should be concerned about, because violations are happening without people taking notice. And when violations are happening without people taking notice, it cannot be curbed. So I wouldn't worry so much about the media, even though it's absolutely abhorrent. But you got to scrutinize the power dynamics as well that is taking place between the authorities and whoever that is having their rights violated.
Tashny, again, I mean, since we're touching on the media, I remember the page administration, they were talking about this media council or something that's supposedly to be somehow help the media to become more, as in, protected or less intervention. So what happened to media council? Is there have you heard anything, or has you or anyone has been asked to be involved in it? Or
honestly, I'm afraid I have no idea. I wish I could tell you more. I probably should go and find out what's happening, but no idea. And I think also a lot of reporters sort of on my level of like going out and doing field work and things like that, we honestly haven't had a day off since Lanka Sheraton. It's been non-stop work for many of us. So I think a lot of these things have not really been the first things on our radar. I mean, it was Lanka Sheraton, then all the party hopping stuff, and then COVID, the lockdown, and then the reopening. So, and then all the crackdowns and freedom of speech. I haven't had time to actually think about any of this other stuff. I wish I could answer you. I probably should be able to. That's on me.
So, to Thomas, I mean, you are chairperson of Bersih, and you have helped actually mobilize people and public to find a space to express their views. So where are we now? Where should we be heading to, Thomas? I mean, is there any light at the end of the tunnel? Are we in a tunnel even, or even we are actually, in a well that there's no way out? So what is your view? How we as a normal Malaysian, anak-anak Malaysia yang kat luar ni, orang biasa dan sebagainya, yang rasa penat, rasa marah, what should we do? What can we do? I mean, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people, and understandably so, are quite depressed with what's been happening politically, because it does affect not just the politics, but even the economy. The instability that is existing now, I think is causing a lot of people to hold back, and this is not the time to hold back. We are just coming out from this MCO, and I think the economy really need to pick up. Otherwise, I think we're going to be entering into a very deep recession that is hard to come out. But I think I want to stay very focused and very positive. I think over the last 20 years, we have made progress. I mean, it doesn't look very good now, but I think we certainly have played a part, and together with other groups and Malaysians, push towards a better country. Of course, you expect some pushback from the other side, because you are dealing with a system that has been ingrained in our country since the foundation, under one party rule, and you don't expect them to take it lying down and walk off into the sunset. So this is the pushback, but I think the fight is still on. The momentum is still there, and I would say that we are not in any way sitting back. But what can we do? I think we need to continue to find way to expose. And I think one of the positive thing I see now compared to 10 years ago, 20 years ago, is that the media, social media is here, and we can basically use it to good effect to expose some of the corruption, some of the lies that is taking place. I think they are very sensitive to that as well. So I think they would want us to pack our bag and migrate off or somewhere, but that is not happening, because we have made progress, and I would not underestimate Malaysians, to see through all these things. Now, a lot of what is happening is actually played out in social media. Perception of Islam being under threat, perception of Malay not being taken care of, play out in social media. And I think that is a battlefield that need to be taken head on, so that the truth gets out. And then when it comes to the next general election, whether it's a snap election or 3 years from now, Malaysian will once again prove the pundits wrong. I mean, the last election, who expected it? Everybody thought is a goner. Yet I think Malaysian prove us all wrong, and I think I still hold out hope that we can push this back, because we have made progress.
Thank you, Thomas. So I take it as your what do you call that, conclusion as well. Maybe you would like to give others as well to give for a chance for you to speak something. What can you share, and what is your word of advice to the people of Malaysia? Maybe we can start with Cynthia. Your mic. Is there hope? Your mic, Cynthia, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to share Thomas' hopefulness and enthusiasm, as difficult as it may look now. I think it's also an opportunity to reinvent, to re-strategize, and to find ways in which we could do several things that Malaysians had galvanized efforts before, and it has worked. And one of the things, I think we've spoken about media a lot, and I'm just remembering the 1MDB, for example, because the local media was so suppressed and harassed. There was a lot of reliance on foreign media actually releasing exposés, information, and everything was popping out internationally. And I think there's a lot of scope for international media to cover what's going on in Malaysia. It's not just the coming out of the COVID pandemic or the economic slowdown, but it's also the change of government that has interested many people and how that has actually impacted on good governance, on human rights, on accountability. And we need to also tell the Malaysian government that as much as they're working in a global context to revive the economy, they need to know they are being watched, not just by Malaysians alone, but we're being watched globally, how we actually deal with governance, how this so-called government that formed itself without the mandate of the people should actually start working to build the trust of the people. So it's something that they need to be reminded, and we need to actually utilize that very actively. So I think the lesson for us, and I speak for myself also as a advocate and a NGO activist that's been in here for so long, one of our weaknesses is we always work in our own corners, that we are not very strategic about how to do things together and what would be things that need to be done which has more impact. And impact is what matters the most, because I mean we can have 100 talk shows and it could mean nothing, but if you have just something that has a you know, like Parliament Digital, for example, that just got everybody sitting up and saying, hey, there is something, there is hope. There's a lot of leadership from the young people, for example. And so I think we need to constantly reinvent, think about ways in which we could do it. And I'm sure we can, we're learning from our neighboring countries, and we are in the right direction, actually. This is just a small step and a small setback that we have to overcome.
Sorry, it seems like Adli seems to have been cut off by his connection. Adli, are you there? Okay, sorry, I will take over for a little while when he reconnects. Maybe Tashny, would you like to help give some wrap up or your closing thoughts about having hope and things like that?
Thank you, Cynthia. So
your mic.
You.
Sorry, boomer moment.
Oh my.
Well, okay. The first thing is, if I can just build off what Cynthia said earlier. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of international attention on Malaysia right now, particularly because countries that move from this competitive authoritarian kind of regime to like something more democratic always have this sort of shift or instability going forward. But I would like to say, with regards to media, the 1MDB thing, The Edge actually did a fantastic job covering the matter, and I think their license was suspended at one point. Journalists held protests, so like we shouldn't minimize the amazing contributions that they did actually put forward with regards to covering that. In terms of having hope, I mean, yes, there've obviously been a lot of setbacks to do with riots of late, and a lot of changes that could have been made during the 21 months of Pakatan Harapan. People were, there was a lot of lag, they were slow to enact this change, and now we are actually, you know, worse off because of it. There were a lot of opportunities that were wasted. But I think it's actually Tom Morello who said that when injustice persists, resistance to injustice also persists. So I guess we have to just bank on that.
Thanks very much, Tashny. And we are fortunate that we do have good friends in the media who are bravely fighting the good fight. Malaysia Kini also now in the federal court and things like that. We do appreciate the work that you do, and this the Morello quote, I think, makes a lot of sense. Hi, Ali. Thanks. Sorry, I took over for a
please,
brief while.
it's okay.
Yeah. So we just finished Tashny. We go to Heidy or Sin Yew. Back to you, Heidy and Sin Yew left, and then we can probably wrap it up soon after. Thanks. You choose.
Yeah. So there's a question by someone in Facebook asking about what if Sin Yew. Maybe I will ask question to Sin Yew. You can close it down. But then asking, what if when we call in for investigation or for a statement and they ask for our phone and laptops and our passwords and everything, can we refuse it, or how does it work?
No, you can't refuse it, because that's actually a power. The police has the power to do that, to secure evidence which is used in relation of an offence. So if it's an investigation under 233 or 506 or whatever, under the penal code, if the medium of committing of that offence is your Facebook or your Wi-Fi router, for example, or your laptop, then the police could do that. So unfortunately, you can't refuse giving your laptop. If you refuse, even if you refuse, it's immaterial because they can still seize it. So your consent does not matter here.
So can you give a word of advice? For example, if someone is called in and then they basically get you to get your advice, what will you be advised to us? I mean, if you got called in, I mean, what is the 101 that you should know of being called by the police?
I think if you have posted something that somebody may take offense or do not like on Facebook, you need to understand that you have the right to remain silent when you give your statement to the police. In fact, that is something that they should tell you, but they may not do that, even though they're required to. But that's something that you should definitely do, because if you try to explain it away, you might end up incriminating yourself further. And I think it's very important for you to understand that simply because you're being investigated, it does not mean that an offense has been committed. Simply because you're charged in court, it does not mean that you are guilty. There are a lot of ways to fight Section 233 because of the way it's being worded. What I feel from what I read in the media is that a lot of people, when they charge, they are probably convinced that they are going to be found guilty, or the police have managed to convince them that, oh, you just get away with a fine. I think if you truly believe that you have the right to say whatever you have said, you shouldn't plead guilty. You should fight it. And I think there are enough CSO and NGOs out there dealing with freedom of expression, and lawyers as well, dealing with freedom of speech and expression, that you can consult, and perhaps something could be done against this section. Something could perhaps start in order to have this draconian provision change. So you need enough people to come out and resist. And that's not going to happen if everyone is just going to plead guilty.
Thank you, Sin Yew. And last but not least, Heidy, can you share a bit of word of advice and just express yourself? What would you like to say to our fellow Malaysians which are basically in this kind of situation?
I guess keep standing up for what is right. I think truth is important, so keep shining light on the truth and keep speaking up for what is right. I think there's so many scare tactics these days, whether is it the insane amount of cyberbullying, and it was actually really concerning, when the refugee, so every year there's this thing called the Refugee Fest happening, where artists from the refugee community come forward and perform, and basically to raise awareness about the plight of refugees in Malaysia. This year itself, we saw 12 refugees. It was all online, and we had a big number of people sign up to just share stories or just share art created around the experience, of being a refugee. This year itself, we saw 12 refugees take a step back because of the fear of because of the insane amount of cyberbullying. I think, I guess for fellow Malaysians, don't be afraid to speak up for what is right. And when you see bullying happening on platforms, speak up against that as well. I think that is extremely important. You know, like what everyone else said on the panel, right? We need to start working together collectively as NGOs, as CSOs, in tandem to support one another. I think that's only when change can really happen.
Thank you, Heidy, for sharing. Before I hand it over back to Nathaniel, our producer of the day, I want to share a verse that is one of my favorite. We're talking about truth. I mean, it's Al-Anbiya, verse 21, ayat 18, which basically shares that rather God says that we dash the truth upon falsehood and it destroys it, and thereupon it departs. And for you is destruction from which you describe. And the word used here is basically dash the truth, or basically in Malay, if I may read, it's just for us to actually look back. I mean, as a as a Muslim, this is what actually moved me. The word used is basically kebenaran akan kami melontarkan yang benar, yang hak kepada yang batil. The word used is lontar because why? The truth is basically like a speed train. They will destroy whatever that is falsehood in front of it. I mean, it's like the bubbles on the sea that exists, but it will destroy immediately. So this is where I guess what we should be in, and we should continue working on. I mean, it's a responsibility as a human being. Whatever religion that you are, is a responsibility as a human being to basically speak the truth and fight against evil or injustices. So I guess, and before that, I'm also reading the book of 1984 by George Orwell. It's a classic one, but I remember that in this book, Winston, who is actually the main character, was asked in a dialogue. It says that it is impossible to found a civilization on fear and hatred and cruelty. It will never endure. So he was asked, why not? According to Winston, that it will have no vitality. It will disintegrate. It will commit suicide. So we don't want that. I mean, we don't want our civilization of Malaysia in 2020 is created based on fear, based on falsehood and everything. So I guess we as human beings, as Malaysian, who invested a lot in this country, maybe we need to do something about it, and we need to start act and speak the truth. I mean, that is the least that we could do: speak the truth and protect those who are voiceless. So I guess Nat, I leave it to you then. Thank you so much for this. Yes, Nat.
Thanks so very much, Ali. Really appreciate it. I didn't originally really plan a closing, but first of all, obviously, thanks very much to all of you. We've had the privilege of knowing each other many years, and we go on hours talking about how much I admire your work, right? But I was really moved by Heidi's sharing of her experience when you're talking about the police saying, oh, kita rasa your intent is to menjatuhkan nama baik negara, and you talked about how that made you feel, and I was really moved. I mean, honestly, I mean, first of all, this is it's an obsession with if you're thinking more about your nama baik than you are thinking about the state of your soul, your conscience, your principles, your values. I mean, that's big problem number one. Number two, I mean, like you said, you of all people, I mean, this Heidy who got a prize from Queen Elizabeth, which I know doesn't mean much to Sin Yew, but and Sin Yew, thank you for staying so long, even though you haven't had dinner. I really appreciate it. But I mean, Cynthia talked a lot about starting something new. We new Sin Yew. But I think me and Adli and a few others have been talking about this for hours and hours, days and weeks and months, and it is something we're working very hard to do. We want to build a better Malaysia, and one where we recognize people like you, where we should. These are the people when you talk about standing up for the truth, right? Melontar kebenaran. These are the people who are mengharumkan nama baik negara, and that's we want to make a Malaysia that recognizes your and appreciates your commitment to Malaysia and your commitment to humanity, all of you, and the work that you've done. It should be celebrated, not investigated. But okay, it's 10 o'clock, so thanks very much again, everyone. We really appreciate it. Let's keep talking and let's keep working and doing beyond talking as well. Thanks everyone who's been following us.
Thanks everyone, and thanks for those watching.
Yeah. Okay. Good night. All the best. We'll be in touch.
You all.
Take care.